Okay, we are live. Hi, everyone. My name is Mike, and what do I know? I'm just a truck driver, or that's my moniker these days. I'm here with my friend Reed, who runs a show called The Naturalist Capitalist, and this is my first episode of my channel. Oh boy, isn't this exciting? Reed, tell us about yourself.
Well, yeah, I did my first episode on my channel with you, if you remember, back in May of 2020. So,
right.
Full circle, here we are, first episode on your show. But yeah, I've been a libertarian for about 5 or 6 years. I've recently become a more radicalized anarchist libertarian over the last year, and I actually joined the party. And I'm getting involved at a deeper level than I've ever been before. The person who actually got me into political activism was Tulsi Gabbard. I always paid attention, and I was always opinionated, but I didn't actually do anything until she came onto the scene. And then seeing how they treated her just kind of red-pilled me to how the system works and how impossible it is to get anyone near the top that would actually change things. So My mission these days is just to try to wake people up and change the way people think and change minds. So I've had some success. I've got a lot of followers, so I'm doing something right. So doing that.
Well, it was an interesting experience coming on your channel for the first time. I didn't really know what to expect and where things could go. I'm also have a strong affinity for Tulsi Gabbard, and I like a lot of her positions. There's some that I would change, but there's things I would change about almost everybody out there. But the interesting thing is, I think most of my politics is going to live on your channel, and I'm going to take my channel in a little bit of a different direction. So the things I am really dead set passionate about are more relating to agriculture and farming and learning how to raise grass-fed beef. And what would the world be like if we could suddenly change all of these corn farms in the Midwest to livestock farms that were rotationally grazing? And could we get rid of the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico? A lot of those kinds of questions. And I don't know if you have any opinions on that kind of stuff, but that's what I want this channel ultimately to be about. I may delve into politics in some ways, and because you really can't touch agriculture in this country without touching politics, because, the government's had its hand in it for several years,
Yeah. So, I do care a lot about that type of stuff. I've wanted to do a podcast for a few years now. I just never thought it was feasible. And I didn't actually want it to be about politics. I wanted to do one about philosophy and minimalism and travel and being in the outdoors. But then politics just ended up being such a huge force that we had to deal with. So I started a political podcast instead. And I kind of wanted to phase away from it, but it's just been so heavily ingrained into my following and who I'm associated with. So at this point, I'm going to try to transition still, but talk about libertarian ideas in travel or in the workforce or in agriculture or in anything. Try to combine them. So I think that's great that's what you want to do, that you want to specifically.
Yeah. And, to take a libertarian bend on agriculture, the fact is the government has had its hand in telling farmers what to grow and how much, and providing insurance, for them to grow it. And, there's an interesting documentary called King Corn where a group of, people decided they purchased an acre of land, or they rented an acre of land and paid a farmer to grow crops on it. And they didn't, they ran through the business, and, if they had just, paid for the actual process of growing it and selling the corn, they would have lost money. but because of the subsidy that was available at the time from the government paid them, X dollars a bushel to do it. So there would be no feasible way to, and I wonder how that's changed, to be honest, because that documentary is a few years old. The crop subsidy plan has changed more to an insurance program now than what it has been in the past. But, if the government is still paying farmers just to grow crops that they don't earn any money on, it seems kind of, you wonder what the reasons for it being the way it is. But the fact is, judging from what I've learned about everything that we do with corn, we could also do with, say, chestnuts, because they're a starch and they grow on trees, and trees, grow taller each year and improve their yields over time. And you don't have to plant them again and again and again. You still have to do maintenance on them every so many years and cut them back and whatnot. But, why are we not allowed to innovate this market and have a market for chestnuts the same way we have corn? It's a funny way to think about it. That these things are not allowed to change because the government's involved, and they don't, see that we don't want to start stepping on the military agricultural industrial complex. You're only allowed to have so many opinions. But
yeah, well, I think that's a great area to delve into, because libertarians tend to be so focused on just a few issues, when that is an issue that could bring in a whole swath of people who feel alienated by libertarianism because they don't have a connection to it, because maybe they don't know anything about the warfare state or about the Federal Reserve or about the drug war. So they're just like, I don't know. Right. So if you can connect with them on that level, that's great potential to expand the message.
Right. So, yeah, like I said, this is my first episode. I'm not even in my truck right now. To everyone out there who might be watching, I'm actually in Reed's apartment at the moment, so we're just around the corner from each other. But
you're actually you're my most frequent guest. Ever stopped in to say hi? I've had two other friends come in, but you've been in, I think, 4 or 5 times to Salt Lake City. So
right. Well,
my most frequent visitor.
As an over-the-road truck driver, I kind of go all over the place, and the company I drive for just happens to have a terminal right here in Salt Lake City. So go SLC, right?
Yeah. Well, I should bring that up too. I'm also a truck driver.
Yeah.
It's not quite fair to say over the road. I'm a regional Western driver, so I drive all Western states, and including Texas. So I'll be gone for a week or two at a time, but usually not 6 weeks like some people are, or like you could be. But I'm out. I move heavy equipment, which I really like, because I'm glad you like what you do, because I would hate it. I would kill myself. But, I like the variety, and I like moving the big machinery. It's just oversized loads. It just makes it more interesting. And I like that style more. But I really like my job. It's the only job I've ever had that I like. Other jobs, there were aspects of it that I would like, but this, I really do enjoy what I do. So that's pretty cool.
That paycheck is pretty nice too, right?
Yeah, it's decent pay. It's high risk, so they got to pay you something to do it.
Right. Comparing what you do, I'm actually over the road. I drive for a large refrigerated carrier who I will at the moment remain nameless. But I've been driving for 9 years. I started doing solo. Well, first I did my training period for, about 40,000 miles with a trainer. And then I drove solo for over 5 years. Then I, had enough money to saved up so I could start a farm with my wife up in upstate New York. And now I don't make enough money driving solo. So if I want to maintain this lifestyle with my wife, I have to do training. So now I'm doing team driving all over the country. Every so often I get a new trainee, but for the most part, you know, I could be anywhere in the upper 48 states and sometimes Canada and anywhere in between. So, you know, you get to travel a lot. You get to see every corner and crevice of this country, at least what you can see from the highway, you know, but it's not a bad way to make a living. And, you know, it more says something about the area I come from and my lack of ability to find a job that I could do that could pay this well. You know, I think it says more about the problems of upstate New York, so to speak, you know, the lack of jobs, so to speak. But, you know,
yeah, well, I can speak to the lack of skilled workers out there. I mean, I'm from New Hampshire, now I live in Utah, and I was doing line work back in New Hampshire. I just really didn't like it. I didn't like the work. It was really hard and dirty, and I just didn't find it interesting. It was really slow pace, even though it was hard. It was one of those jobs that you simultaneously were falling asleep and dying from exhaustion on. It was just not a good mix.
It sounds pretty intense.
Yeah, I mean, you got to wear long sleeves, rubber gloves, you know, and when it's 100 degrees and super humid. So it does get that hot in New Hampshire. I know a lot of people don't think it does. You think it gets up to 60 in the summer. It's in the high 90s, super humid. It's miserable.
But was that a 40 an hour a week job, or how many hours a week was that?
At least. I mean, it was 40 to 60 a week, you know, anywhere in between.
Right.
Which is pretty much the same hours I work now, but I'm driving, you know, and so I knew I liked to drive and truck because when I got my license, in order to get that line work job, I really loved learning how to drive a truck, but I didn't want to drive a box truck because I thought I would just get bored. So I was like, okay, I really like moving this heavy equipment stuff. It's super oversized. You go all sorts of weird locations. So I put a feeler out to like 5 different employers. And this was before I told, it wasn't an application. It was just like, okay, I've had my CDL for 7 years. I think of that. Yeah. 7 years. You know, no accidents, good driving record. And then I had some pictures of the machines I'd moved, and I hadn't moved anything really big, just kind of normal to legal size loads. And I thought they were going to say, okay, you know, go haul for a construction company for 2 years and then call us back. Everyone was just like, when can you start? And I realized that wasn't a statement about me. That was a statement about the industry and about how many of them are. And, you know, people they're not going into the right fields. There's a giant, especially now, and the shortage in work is manipulated differently now than it was before. COVID. Now it has to do a lot with unemployment checks. But even before this whole COVID hysteria hit, there were underfilled positions in a lot of industries, you know, because the Department of Education is funneling people into debt-filled jobs that are just going to not make them a lot of money and actually make them more dependent on the system, where you can become an equipment operator, a farmer, a truck driver, a mechanic, an electrician, and you could make 6 figures a year if you wanted to. And your schooling non-existent or paid for within a couple of years if you sign a contract. And, you know, no one's been doing that. So it's been a disaster.
Yeah. So, you know, I might take this opportunity to talk a little bit about my background and why I'm calling this channel What Do I Know? I'm Just a Truck Driver. The fact is, this is a second career for me. Prior to driving truck, I was working on farms pretty much almost exclusively. And, you know, one of these days, or, you know, I'm going to discuss a little bit about my journey that I had. You know, I was teenager in upstate New York. I had always wanted to have a farm, but my parents were not into agriculture. You know, I grew up in suburbia, just like, you know, many people in this country. And my first exposure to farms was when I was 17. I got a summer job working on a dairy farm and fell in love with it and, you know, never wanted to leave, you know. And unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of money to be had working on a farm, you know, and I could tell from the people I was working at and the quality of, you know, the lifestyle I saw my employer living, he wasn't making very much money either. So, you know, it's kind of the nature of the business, if but anyway, going back to my story, I was a teenager. I got done with high school and I decided I'm going to go to college for farming. So I went to a college in New York called SUNY Morrisville, which was, your 2-year program, and you could get hands-on working with animal experience and all that other fun stuff. And then you could transfer to Cornell University, which I did. And I got a bachelor's from Cornell. And, I could tell you all of the components of a cow, what makes her tick, all of the different stomachs they have. And, the main, I took nutrition, I took farm business, which is actually really helpful because that actually learning how to run a business has, I'm actually doing that as a truck driver. I lease a truck, I manage cash flow, if I need more money, I spend more time out on the road, and, I kind of let how trucking works dictate how much money I have in my bank account, so it's very real hands-on managing a business. But, as I say, why am I starting a channel as a truck driver and I'm going to be focusing a lot on agriculture? It's because agriculture is really what I wanted to do. When I got out of college, I said, okay, I'm going to go buy a piece of land, start a farm, do all that. But those opportunities were closed off to me, and the jobs I was working were not making me enough money where I could save up, buy some land and some animals and do the thing. It's kind of sad that section of the American dream just is out of reach for some people. And I'm sure, once I finally start getting a community, maybe some people will be able to come on and share their story about something like that,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I would say most people are not doing what they want to do. And, it doesn't seem like that's always been the case. It seems like back in the day, people had a career and maybe they just didn't push beyond that career. But it does seem things were more attainable in the past. It was easier to buy a house and buy land and have it paid off pretty early on and live a pretty decent life without being tens of thousands of dollars in debt. That's not the norm anymore. And I think a lot of people don't realize the relation to government policy with that problem, and if they do think there's a government policy, it's that they think taxes aren't high enough, which that's not the problem. It's devaluation of money, wealth transfers to the 1% through government bailouts, all those types of things, endless wars that have drained the treasury. There's so many things that have screwed over the middle class. And it's not the lack of 90% corporate tax rates. That's not going to fix anything. So,
I still think a lot of it comes down to inflation and their ability to print money. And, when, the grandfather of the farmer I used to work for back in high school started that farm with 15 cows, and he was able to get hundreds of acres of land for a reasonable amount of money. And I don't see opportunities like that in the area I live anymore. The place I'm living on now, I thought I got a great deal on. I spent $140,000 on a house with 10 acres of land, with hopefully the prospect of getting more. But, unfortunately, I wasn't able to get it. So now I'm starting to look for someplace else. But, finding a house with a small acreage to start a beginner farm is really hard. In many areas of this country, you can't find land cheap enough, or, unless you're willing to go and find another farmer and take over their operation because they want to retire. There are some opportunities for that in upstate New York. There's a program called New York Farm Link, which I used to be a member of, but I would never be able to find someone who was kind of in line with my own progressive thinking. I'm into grazing animals and not too much on purchasing feed. If I was to have a dairy, I'd probably do 100% grass fed, with the minimal amount of inputs on the side, because grazing is what these animals do better than any other animal. They can convert cellulose into food, and we're sitting here at a time when they're trying to create plant-based burgers and whatnot that resemble meat, but the fact is you can't make that out of cellulose. You still got to take grain and grow it and process it and turn it into something, whereas you just take a cow and grind it up and turn it into a hamburger patty. It's just a real different animal, so to speak.
Yeah. We were talking about buying land and how it's getting harder. Also with houses, I wonder if inflation is going to outrun the housing market. And what I mean by that is, I don't know if the housing market is going to crash again really soon, or if inflation is going to make it impossible. Someone knocking at the door?
Yeah.
I guess I'll come see him.
Okay, hold on. I can pause this.
Okay. Yeah, just drop me out.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh.
No.
Package ordered food. Oh, must be your neighbor or your.
I don't know. Hey, is this yours, man? Yeah. Well, anyways.
Hey. Okay, where do we leave off? I can just do it. And we're back.
I was saying that I don't know if the housing market is going to outrun inflation, or inflation is going to outrun the housing market. And what I meant by that is, I don't know if the housing market, the housing market is obviously super overinflated, but is the currency as overinflated as the housing market? So are we going to see the housing market crash again really soon? Or is the currency going to crash instead? It's kind of a gamble. We don't really know.
Yeah, well, if the Fed's target is to grow interest rates by 2% per year, that results in a doubling of prices every 37 years or so. So, and if they're understating inflation the way some people like John Williams would say, where things are closer to 10 or 20% inflation, if you were to use older measures, prices could double a lot quicker than that. It's hard to say.
Yeah. I don't really know. I'm not an economist, but a lot of this stuff it's easier to be smarter than the mainstream media, but I think being smarter than the mainstream media makes us feel like prophets and like we know what's going to happen, when we really don't know exactly what's going to happen, but we should prepare. So, I have gold and silver. I know you do too.
Yeah.
I'm not into Bitcoin because I'm at the point where I think that's just a Ponzi scheme. I think Peter Schiff's actually about that. Man, real estate. I'm actually doing a show later this afternoon, the Four Horsemen on my show with Clint from Liberty Lockdown, and he's a real estate mortgage broker. So it'll be interesting to talk to him about inflation versus housing prices, what you should do right now. I don't know. And this is not financial advice because it's from me.
Obviously,
right.
we're not a certified financial consultant or anything.
Exactly. Yeah.
But, one of the guests I'm planning to have on is Mark Shepard, and he'll have some interesting things to talk about with relating to the farm programs that allow you to, his model was he bought degraded farmland in Wisconsin, and, it used to be corn land, but it was too degraded, so they kind of let it go, and he bought it with an investor, almost entirely on credit card debt, and turned that into productive permaculture system now that produces food. He's selling produce to the Organic Valley market, along with raising hazelnuts and pork and chestnut trees. And, they have a nursery system. I'm going to highlight a lot of different farmers out there who are making it happen, so to speak.
Yeah. You've got a chat. Someone's watching. If you
I see that.
It'll show up on the screen. So
I see that. So we have a question. How is Bitcoin a scam when it's on the blockchain? And I can't tell if that's a joke or not.
Yeah. You got to look into Tether and see how Tether is not actually pegged to a currency like it supposedly is. It's right. I had someone on my channel the other day, and he was saying that Tether is probably 7% backed by US dollars. And if we're measuring Bitcoin in value to US dollars, the price is way inflated compared to what it should be.
Yeah.
So the problem really is that Bitcoin isn't as independent as we're acting like it is. It has its own Federal Reserve through Tether, basically, because they're you print off tethers, so to speak, to inflate the price of Bitcoin. So it's not as centralized as people think it is.
If anyone wants to know a countering opinion on Bitcoin, I would suggest looking into some Peter Schiff, or Rob Keents from Gold Silver Pros has done an excellent breakdown on Bitcoin and why he thinks it's a scam. I think some people think that NSA is behind it because they're trying to test water on cryptocurrencies so that someday when it collapses, we can come in with a Fed coin.
See, I'm not an anti-crypto guy in general. Mm-hmm. I just specifically Bitcoin, I think is, and I could be wrong about it. Maybe it's more legit than I think, but it's turned into a religion. Like, you can't
right.
You talk to people about how you think you're skeptical of it. I mean, they demonize you as though you're a Fed or something, and I'm not. Believe me, but I mean, I feel the same way about, what is it, EFCs? Is that what the certificates for gold and silver are? Like you gotta buy the real thing. I'm the same way with certificates. I mean, this is how they weren't able to corner the silver market recently, because the certificates were sort of printed off to,
well, there's
of silver.
The silver market is something I've been doing a lot of research on, and what's really going on is the fact that the major bullion banks use the paper market to determine the price of the physical commodity, when there's really no relationship of the paper markets to the physical amount of supply and demand for the physical market.
Right.
So in many ways, certain, if JP Morgan Chase or one of the other bullion banks like Goldman Sachs decides that they want to dump a lot of paper positions onto the market at 4:00 in the morning, when it's very thinly traded and there's not a lot of, open interest, they can bump the price down $2 or $3 and, run a whole bunch of stop losses, in the market that are just trailing out there, because they have access to all that information, because they own and operate cooperatively the SLV trust. So they know that what kind of open interest is out there, and they can use that to manipulate the price. So,
yeah. So, there are some cryptocurrencies that are smaller, which, investing in those actually might not be a bad idea. And I just don't buy this whole, and same with gold, by the way. I don't think gold is going to be the next world reserve currency. I don't think they're ever going to go back to that. Maybe they will, but I'm skeptical of that just as much as these people who are saying Bitcoin is going to be the world reserve currency. Like, what? No, I don't know.
I think we're running into trouble with the amount of transactions that can happen in an hour,
with Bitcoin.
With Bitcoin, yeah. I mean, if it was going to replace the SWIFT system that is used for international trade, there's thousands of transactions happening every minute.
Yeah.
If you can't do that with Bitcoin, I don't think. Right. I think it takes 20 or 30 seconds to close a transaction or something like that. And the since it's a blockchain, every next transaction, the equation that has to be solved is longer than the previous one.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, I just think at some point you're going to run into diminishing marginal returns, and you're not going to be able to sustain the amount of computer or energy to keep the transactions going. I don't know. I feel like it has a short lease on life. Someday it's going to become untenable. And, that's kind of my reasoning for staying away from it. I think it's a little bit of a difference between gambling versus investing. Investing, you kind of have a plan. You say, okay, I'm going to buy this company because I think they're going to be making more money 5 years from now than they are today, and their stock value is going to increase because of that. Versus going and saying, okay, there's an interest in game. There's you look at GameStop just recently. GameStop, they on this forum called Wall Street Bets, they said, hey, there are more short positions than there are shares outstanding on this GameStop. So if we all buy and don't have a trailing stop behind it, they can't bump us out of the market, and we can force the price higher using options, which is what happened. And boy, it didn't happen. It's a company that was considering, close to bankruptcy, and everyone just assumed, this stock is going to go to zero, and we're just going to keep driving the price down until it gets there and then make all this money off it. And now some people are eating their shirt,
Yeah.
But I don't know enough about who the interests are. I'd imagine some hedge funds follow Wall Street Bets just as much as the other hedge funds, who are making bets against it. That's kind of that business, is they're just making bets all the time. The price is either going to go up or down. Sometimes they're trading all day long. Sometimes they're buying options. Sometimes they're taking both sides of every position. So if it goes higher, they make money. If it goes down, they also make money,
Right.
And it's Wall Street is a funny place, and it seems so detached from the physical world, whereas, if you want to become a farmer, like I've always been interested in, okay, I have 20 cows, they have 20 calves, 10 of them are bulls. 2 years from now, I'll be able to ship those bulls and sell 20 steers worth of meat. And there's physical, like you can touch things, but you're in Wall Street, you're just sharing pennies, you're chasing money around. And in many ways, I think Thomas Jefferson's vision of what this country could have been is right, had we focused on, natural resources being the source of wealth versus banks that print money, which is what Andrew Jackson, there was a long-standing debate between the two back in the day when this nation was founded. Jackson was on the side of cities and central banking and thinking, money comes from a bank,
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Alexander Hamilton would be most impressed if he were alive today,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, things are beyond his wildest dreams as far as having a strong central government and a strong central bank. Got another comment here?
I do. Let's see what they had to say. Cat83 says, I heard El Salvador will use Bitcoin for regular transactions starting in September, so I'll pay attention to what happens there and other countries. I don't blame them trying to get away from the IMF. I see all this and I say we're trading one fiat system for another,
Yeah, everyone uses the dollar,
So it's hard for me to comment on it because I just don't understand it well enough. And I've had people try to explain the Bitcoin thing to me, and I still don't quite see it as the answer to the world's problems. Like you said earlier, I think there's a bit of religion or religious doctrine built into that leads people to, fork their entire life savings into it, and never sell and huddle forever. And,
I mean, you should be skeptical of everything, This is what a lot of libertarians are wrong about. I think they're just contrarian, and they have absolute faith in whatever is contrary to the public narrative. So, and this is where you run into kook movements like the, there was no coronavirus. Well, yeah, there is a coronavirus, but, the details go further than that. And that's how you can actually find more incriminating evidence about the powers that be when there actually is a coronavirus. It's the same with like 9/11. Right. There were no planes that hit the towers. They were holograms. It's just stupid. And it actually takes eyes off of real things that could have happened that we should be questioning. So I see people doing that with Bitcoin. They're just like buying it hook, line, and sinker. And if you question it at all, you're a blue-pilled statist cuck or something.
The fact that CNBC is doing regular coverage with their guests about Bitcoin and constantly, if you look at who the advertisers on CNBC are, it's the Bitcoin trusts, and they're just talking about it constantly. If there's a narrative behind it, and lots of people are really counting on a new influx of people bringing money in all the time in order to keep the price action going in the right direction. If everyone who made thousands and thousands of dollars riding Bitcoin all the way up decided to take their money and walk, the price would fall through the floor.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
No, I got another comment. Let's see here. So back to Bitcoin, but there is only 21 million Bitcoin. They won't create more. Not to say that it is the solution, but it is far better than the current fiat petrodollar, where we can make money printers go burr, LOL. That's a fair point, but it's also true that Bitcoin can be fractioned infinitely. So even though there's only 20 million Bitcoin, you can fraction it infinitely and have the number of Satoshis is probably infinite. And there's nothing saying that Bitcoin is can't be the money action to pray. I'm a real interesting person to check out is a guy on Twitch called Diso Games, and he talks a lot about the way that these cryptocurrencies are interacting with each other. Specifically Bitcoin, Tether, Binance. There's a bunch of them that are all linked, and he seems to think that it's a shell game where money is just moving around from one to the next, and they're all propping up prices for each other and listing each other as assets on their balance sheet. And it's potentially going to fall apart at some point. Who knows? It may last forever.
Also check out Ryan Hogue. I just had him on my show. That's HOG, Ryan Hogue. We talked about Bitcoin and how it's possibly about to fall apart. So, and to his comment, it might be better than the dollar, maybe, but better than the dollar doesn't mean much, like you said, if you can fraction something forever, it doesn't really matter if you can't print off more of it, if you can break it apart. So.
Right. And, you can still use dollars to buy real things. You can go buy land, you can go buy animals, you can go, raise a farm and have animals to sell. And, if you want to link your prices to gold and silver and say, okay, it's one ounce of silver for a chicken, you can do that,
Yeah.
There's nothing stopping you.
Yeah. Yeah. Bitcoin's becoming more mainstream. You can use it to buy more things now. So, it might become more mainstream. I just don't think it's much more solid than the dollar is what I'm saying. So I'm not saying it won't become more acceptable to use, but I don't know. I'm not an expert on this stuff. I have my own opinions. I always revert to other people when I'm talking about this, because I just have my opinions and my limited knowledge. Just like when I'm talking about foreign policy, I'll say, really you should go listen to Scott Horton on this more. If I'm talking about the deep state or 9/11 or something, go listen to Ryan Dawson on this more. If I'm talking about, currency and monetary policy, go listen to Peter Schiff or Clint from Liberty Lockdown, or, these other people who actually have an expertise in this. So, don't come crying back to me in 2 years if I was wrong, because I just gave my opinion and, from who I listen to. So,
and you know what? I could be wrong about Bitcoin. I don't know. I just know that, the people who are just fanatical about it, I think, are going to lose their shirt someday, because, stock or markets don't always move in one direction. It does not work like that. And you need to know when to sell and move out. And, if you want to be a day trader of Bitcoin or a trader, make a money off of the patsies who just keep buying it stupidly, go for it. But, it could blow up in your face, and be prepared to lose everything.
Yep.
I don't know, but okay. So we'll probably start wrapping this up. Anything else you'd like to pitch, Reed, before we go?
Yeah, sure. Subscribe to Mike's channel if you're over here from my tweet. He and I have done a lot of episodes together on my show last year. I haven't done one in a little while. I'll have to get him over on my show again here sometime soon, just to talk about this show, talk about agriculture. But if you are one of Mike's people, come follow me at the Naturalist Capitalist, Reed Coverdale on Twitter. And I'll be going live in about 4 hours on my channel with Ryan Dawson, Eric Jackman, and Clint from Liberty Lockdown for 2 hours. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be a good stream. Come check it out.
Yep.
Thanks for having me on, Mike.
Yep. All right. Thank you, everyone. And just remember, what do I know? I'm just a truck driver. You got to find out your answers for yourself.
Me too.
All right. Thanks.
Mike, you didn't end it.